Who cut the cable? China is involved in cutting two cables in the Baltic Sea involving four NATO countries. Has China become an active participant in the Ukraine war? This week, two undersea data cables were cut in the Baltic Sea on Sunday and Monday, November 16th and 17th. A Chinese ship is suspected of having a role in the incident and is currently anchored near Denmark with a Danish warship anchored nearby. European and U.S. officials suspect that Russia is responsible for hybrid attacks throughout Europe, which they believe are a response to their support for Ukraine in its war against Russia. Europe is now investigating the issue to determine if indeed China has become an active participant utilizing hybrid attacks of its own. Hybrid warfare is defined by NATO, includes political interference, sabotage, and influencing activities such as disinformation campaign. This is a fairly broad definition, and disinformation campaigns and political interference can be problematic to define within relatively free Western societies. Despite concerns about the overly broad interpretation, we can view hybrid warfare as a component of total warfare, which recognizes both military and civilian personnel, assets, and infrastructure as legitimate targets in the pursuit of the elusive battle of annihilation. Total warfare seeks all methods to weaken a nation's military to such an extent that it is subjected to total destruction. We can view World War II as an example of this strategy. The difference between total warfare in the classical view of World War II and hybrid warfare is that total warfare is the use of military means to attack and destroy all of the nation's means to conduct warfare. Hybrid warfare involves the use of non-military means to disrupt and disable a country's assets. This encompasses the employment of state and non-state actors acting on behalf of a state to subvert or sabotage an adversary through both kinetic and non-kinetic means. The Chinese have employed an old tactic from their Communist Revolution period, known as gray zone tactics, to disrupt a state actor through non-military means. The Chinese use their maritime militia in the South China Sea exemplifies this today. The incidents that took place in the Baltic Sea on Sunday and Monday involved the cutting of underwater data cables. On Sunday at 10 a.m. local time, the BCS East-West cable from Lithuania to Sweden was the first to be cut. The second cable cut occurred on Monday at 4 a.m. local time, targeting the Sea Lion 1 cable, which runs from Finland to Germany. Although the cause or culprit remains unclear, the Yi-Pang 3, a Chinese-flagged bulk carrier, sailed from the Russian port of Vishtuno in the Baltic, and its vessel tracking data indicates it crossed each underwater cable at the time of each severing. While European and U.S. officials agree that the Yi-Pang 3 cut the cables, they disagree on whether it is intentional or accidental. Although there have been instances of underwater cable cutting in the past, it is a rare occurrence. An explosion in September 2022 mysteriously destroyed the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which was transporting natural gas from Russia to Germany in the Baltic Sea. The destruction of infrastructure on the Baltic Sea floor has resulted in a great deal of suspicion on both sides. Finnish and Swedish officials have publicly stated that the cutting of the lines was deliberate and have opened law enforcement investigations. The U.S. officials have not reached the same conclusion as Swedish and Finnish authorities, however, and they maintain that the incident could have been a simple accident, such as a dragging an anchor on the sea floor. The U.S. has publicly stated that they do not perceive a connection between the Chinese ship owner of the Yi-Pang 3 and the Chinese government. This statement appears to be an attempt to avoid provoking the Chinese leadership, given the difficulty of reliably determining it at this stage of the investigation. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said they are unaware of the Baltic Sea situation, but they would say that regardless. Swedish and Finnish officials have strong evidence that the Yi-Pang 3 cut the cable, but they do not yet publicly proven the Chinese intent. This would likely require the boarding of the vessel to examine the ship, collect data, and interview the crew. This scenario is likely to spark an international incident. The use of a civilian ship that can plausibly cut underwater infrastructure but also create deniability of intent would fit into the Chinese model of gray zone tactics. If European authorities take action against the Chinese civilian asset, this could provide an excuse for the Chinese authorities to instigate a crisis, justifying their state-level intervention in the protection of their civilians. Even if this were not the case, the Chinese government of use and embrace of gray zone tactics raises suspicion whenever their civilian assets damage a rival's critical infrastructure. Even if the Chinese government is not involved, the gray zone sword can have both positive and negative effects. The United States, for its part, has a vested interest in refraining from accusing the Chinese. This is because they do not want to encourage the Chinese to alter their policy of not providing direct military support to the Russian war effort, or worse, to take more aggressive actions in the South China Sea, which would include actions against Taiwan or U.S. allies such as South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines. China may have intentionally cut the cables, as their use of gray zone tactics would support this and raise legitimate suspicions of their involvement. However, they are likely to get away with it, as the U.S. does not want China to use this incident as a pretext to change its policy towards supporting Russia in its war in Ukraine.